I
Coming up on
respect my
Unleash
bride
Thyself.
so much that I refuse to yell at her and act like a second grader. Now, full disclosure, full transparency, I have yelled and acted like a second grader with my kids lots of times. Okay, let's just right. So they have never seen us yell at each other, but they have been yelled at by me over stupid stuff over and over and over and over and over again. So I just want to make
We've thrown tantrums with our children.
Yes, we definitely have. In the car, outside the car, whatever. My kids still remember some good ones. They're like, "Oh, Dad, you were really mad." I'm like, "Yes, I was." I still harken back to the one I feel the most stupid. Man, I was so upset.
Welcome, beautiful soul, to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey into the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. I am your host, Konstantin Morun, and today we welcome Evan and Susan Money. They're happily married, #1 best-selling authors, and global entrepreneurs. And what I love the most, because it resonates so much with our mission here at Unleash Thyself and my personal mission, is their mission, which is to bring your dreams to life because the world needs more people living their dreams. Now, Susan and Evan, I know we could be spending half an hour just doing intros here because you guys have achieved so much and done so many things. But I want to just jump into the conversation right away. I know the two of you have married each other for decades, every single year. So let's start right there. Why? Because I mean, I can see the connection. Like, let me actually add one more thing before sorry to interrupt you. Like, I saw the way you look at each other when we were in the pre-recording studio. I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. Yes. And the way Susan looks at you, Evan, and the way you look at her, I'm like, okay, there's something there I need to know. And I'm sure the audience does too.
Yeah. So, as we were talking, you were helping us give us an understanding of your audience. For those that are listening, they're in the C-suite or us fellow ADD entrepreneurs like myself. We love having our mindset challenged. And I think the biggest area that people need to be challenged in is relationships. And so our movement is called the Marriage of Greatness. Because when you talk about greatness, usually people are talking about it in sports, right? We're still talking about Michael Jordan and his greatness, and deservedly so, right? I mean, the Jumpman logos on our clothes and all this stuff, but he hasn't played basketball in 30 years. Okay, but we're still talking about it. People still talk about the way Michael Jackson moves. Other people can do his moves, but they're not Michael Jackson, right? So the greatness in sports, greatness in music, greatness in art, greatness in business, right? For all our C-suite, C-suite champs, and there's all about Good to Great, and which is a classic, right? And just all the great stuff in the business world. But no one ever talks about that. We've heard about having greatness in their marriage. And so we were like, wow, what if you took that same mindset and that same intentionality and applied it to your marriage? So what my bride and I did, and there's a long story, maybe get into it, how it came about, but we get remarried in a different state or country every year. And here's why, Constantine. This is the cool part. I know many of your listeners, all of us, we're all familiar with kind of Tony Robbins and his, just stuff that he was pioneering in the 80s, right? That people are still talking about again today, and pretending that it's theirs. But if you go back, it's really Tony, and then Tony got it from Jim, and Jim got it from Zig, and right, you go down the road there. But always talking about states, how to manage your states. So when we're getting remarried in a different state or country every year, or like this year we did 2, we did Uganda and Ethiopia. That was exciting. And the year before that, we did Alaska and we did the UK. But we're either in one of 2 states, Constantine. We are either in a state of post-honeymoon bliss. Woohoo! That's what we're in right now, talking about, wow, Africa was so amazing. It was so cool. Yeah. Or we're in this state of planning the next dream adventure. Hey, where do you want to go? What could we do? Where could it be like? How are we going to do it? We were telling you off air kind of what our next one's going to be, kind of geeking out about that. And so now we're transitioning to anticipation mode. We're going to be going on our wedding journey next fall. And so we had a friend that we're going to visit. They just texted us, the leaves changing colors. They're like, okay, can't wait till you're here next year. So now we're building the anticipation. So we're in either one of these 2 states. And so when you're in that state, it's really hard to get upset at your mate when they're a little snippy over something, or when they, did something you didn't appreciate, right? If you're in that state, that stuff just flies by. But if you're stressed and you're angry and you're somewhere else and they do something a little ticky, then all of a sudden it's like, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're in the state of a post-honeymoon bliss, you're in the state of, oh, we're looking forward to it, that stuff just flies by. And it's so much easier to stay, in your position. I'm a big sports guy. And doesn't matter what sport, I don't know what sport they play up in Nova Scotia. I don't know if they do.
I'm a big soccer fan, but yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happens up there, but doesn't matter what sport you're in. If you're out of position, bad things happen. Yes. Nothing ever good happens when you're out of position. And so, especially at the higher levels, right? Because everybody's fast, everybody's strong, and you're leaning one way too much, and it's over, right? Where in lower sports you can compensate, but in in the high level stuff, Olympic stuff, one little thing and it's over. So. Yeah. So what we like to do is make sure we're in the right position. And I always like to tell people, the biggest room in our house is the room for my improvement. Mm-hmm. And so if I stay there and work on my stuff, that's a lifelong journey, it's much better than me peeking over and looking at her room going, hey, you need some help over here. Hey, right? But that's out of position. I need to be in my room working on my stuff, right?
I love that.
Yeah. And so that keeps us in position. It keeps us grounded. It keeps us centered. And it's all around this new mindset of saying, wow, let me apply this greatness to our marriage. Now, as much as I wanted to play professional sports, I played pro football for all of 45 minutes. And then the coaching staff asked me to leave camp. Okay, that was my big journey. So I was like, okay, but if I can use that same mindset, and if I could win the Super Bowl of marriage, how could I do that? And so again, we just challenge all the entrepreneurs and the C-suiters out there. What if you took that same mindset into your relationships? Mm-hmm. What would that look like for your marriage? What would that look like for your parenting? What would that look like for your friendships? Mm-hmm. I just had a friend of mine refer me to another connection. He's like, hey, you need to meet Evan. He can help you with this and possibly this and this. And he put on the email, he said, Evan will vehemently resist shallow conversations. So he's like, I'm just warning you, right? Like, don't come to him with shallow stuff. He's not the guy, right? And so again, it's that championship greatness mindset. And that's why I referred to good to great. It's like, okay, good enough wasn't good enough for mm-hmm. us. We wanted to be great. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, how do we take action? How do we make that happen? So per my wife's address to you, Constantine, as the podcast started, I'm really good at long answers to short questions.
I loved all of it. Susan, what's your take?
What is my take? I was just listening to Evan because he answers it and he always throws a little bit of a different spin on what how he answers things. And so I'm always, even after being married for 27 years, I'm still blown away. We just want to help other people have what we have. And if it's and it just started with the inspiration that God gave us when we first got married, of getting married every year in a different country, a state. And now Evan has set his goal at getting married 100 times by his 100th birthday. So he's going to turn 54 this year. So that means we have to double up a couple of years, which is totally fine. But we just we see what we have, and then we look around us in different communities that we're part of, and we're like, you know what? There's so much dysfunction and there's so much sadness and so much people are just lonely and their needs are not getting met. And if we can share with other people even just one thing that's going to help their lives be better, then that's what we want to do. And that's why we do podcasts and we write books and, we do interviews like this, is we just want other people to have what we have and even better.
Yes.
Wow. So beautiful. And inspirational at the same time. What have you seen of people that have followed your way of being and making it their own, of course? Is it something that's hard to implement? Because I'm thinking, practically, right? Like we're all entrepreneurs or high achievers here. It's like, okay, how do I put this in practice? Like if someone doesn't have, let's say, the time, right? Because some people don't want to make the time for this. Maybe they don't have the means yet to go to a different place every year to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we can go a lot of different directions, but I'll start with the means part, and I'll
Short answer.
Yeah, short answer. Well, first I want to challenge the entrepreneurs and the C-suiters out there, and I'll give you a Jim Rohn quote. So it's not me, it's Jim saying this. So if you're gonna get mad at Jim, right?
Cheers.
And the bottom line is you can either find a way or find an excuse, and that is true in everything. And that's what I was faced with when my bride and I went to this Dream Big seminar. And when we first got married, our last name really is Money. So for those that are wondering,
it was in name only when I married.
Yes. And it was in name only for a long time. But I mean, to the point where our bride's like, wasn't there anything? Like, what are all these negatives? Like, what's going on? And hey. So we were young, we were beyond broke. In today's world, right, there's different, like back in our day, when you were broke, you were really broke. Like nowadays, you can go way past negative and you can get creative and do all this stuff. But back then, it was like, man, there's just nothing, there's just no money. So we were at the point where we go to the grocery store and we use a debit card because I couldn't qualify for a credit card. And you swipe the debit card, and it would say declined. And so my bride would have to put the different, okay, let's put the meat back, let's put the yogurt back and put all the expensive stuff back and then swipe it again and hope, okay, it went through. Yay. I mean, that's where we were. And so we were really good at figuring out like, how can we find ways to learn and grow? Because we knew in order for things to change, we had to change, right? And I don't have any money, so I can't afford the cassette tapes and again, dating ourselves, and the CDs and the different programs, but we would find cost-effective events and figure out ways to get into them. And she would not be willing to go in the side door. I'm like, oh, let's just sneak in and go here. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that, right? Because she came from the other side of the tracks, right? Like they had gas money and they had food every day. And so I came from survival, and I'm like, hey, how can we figure this out? So we're at this event. And they're talking about big dreams and doing this, and we're getting all excited. And she looks at me and says, let's get remarried in a different state or country every year. Because again, she comes from a family, they're used to traveling, used to doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I didn't say this, but I'm like, I don't even know how we're going to pay for gas to get home. And she wants to go to a different state or country every year. But I knew, right, not to steal her dream. And Jim Rohn was ringing in my ears. You can find a way or find her excuse. So I'm like, I'm going to find a way. So Constantine, I was like, okay, we have no money. She wants to do a different state or country. And I'm racking my brain. We lived in Southern California. We're in Los Angeles, still here. And I'm like, okay, what can we do? The biggest I could think at that time, Constantine, this is how big my big thinking were. I'm like, okay, we can go to Tijuana, Mexico, wedding destination capital of the world.
Which is a 2-hour drive south.
Yeah. So no offense if you're from Tijuana, but people that know that town, it's kind of a, not a desirable place. It's kind of a, old border town in Mexico, but that's all I could think of. And so I'm like, okay, I've got a year because we were just married. I'm like, okay, I got a year to save up enough gas money to get to Tijuana. Maybe we can get a $10 sundress and go find some old stone broken down church somewhere or something.
Hey, it's Constantine here, and I want to take a brief moment to truly thank you for being a part of this incredible journey of transformation. You are the reason we are creating this content. I see you and I appreciate you. Your support truly means the world to me. I want to ask you for a small favor. I'd love for you to join our mission by hitting like, subscribe, or leaving a thoughtful comment or review. Your engagement helps others discover these insights, and together we can continue to unlock the power of authenticity and personal transformation. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Now, back to the episode.
That was my big thinking, right? Because those were my limitations, right? And I was very loyal to them. Like, okay, right? So, but here's how God works. It's so amazing. I think he definitely applauds effort. And so he saw us just doing the best that we could with what we had. And lo and behold, my bride and I ended up, it's a much longer journey, but for the sake of the podcast, we'll say winning. We kind of earned it, but it felt like winning. But we ended up winning this all expense paid trip to Paris, France.
Wow.
And on the exact day of our anniversary, the private tour stop was Versailles, the Palace of Versailles. And me being the highly educated surf bum that I was, I didn't know what the Palace of Versailles was. And I'm just like, wow, this place is much bigger than Costco. Like, this is huge. So we ended up having an amazing private ceremony at the Palace of Versailles. And that was God's way of saying, like, okay, you're thinking Tijuana, I'm thinking Versailles. Like, let me show you the possibilities. And so I would love to say that after that event, we turned it all around like the other guests that you've had. And, oh yeah, we scaled and then we had a liquidation event for 100 billion and life has been great. No, it was 10 years of how do we get more creative? How do we go over here? How do we do this? And so the real thing is, again, you're either going to find an excuse or find a way. So if we found a way, and if you look on our website, I'm sure you put it in the notes, evanlovesusans.com, we have all 33 of our weddings. And people ask us, like, why are these pictures so bad? Like, what's going on? We're like, we didn't have any money. We had a cardboard disposable camera. Like, I didn't have phones in my camera. We couldn't afford a photographer. Like, this is like, working with what we had. But slowly but surely, right, it kept going. So it's not about the destination or the details. It's about the dedication and the devotion.
Right.
And that same question you asked me, Constantine, I'm thinking about now. Every entrepreneur has faced that with a startup, right? And they made it work and they found a way. And so it's like, hey, if you can start up a company or multiple companies, you can figure out a way to bring in a greatness mindset to your marriage. And we've had plenty of couples that are like, hey, we just had a backyard renewal. We're so excited. They didn't feel a need to go, oh, I got to go to Europe or do this. They just had a beautiful one in their backyard. We had a young couple. Tell us about the young couple we did at Remarrying Hill.
Oh, yeah. So we have a young couple that we inspired, I guess, which is what we want to do. And they live in Texas. And so they decided when they had their first anniversary that they wanted to come to California. And they asked us to renew their vows for them. So they saved up all their money. They came out and stayed in their little tiny itty bitty hotel and came to us. And we got a basket full of rose petals. And we walked up to the top of the cliff. And we had a little ceremony just right there, just the four of us. I took some pictures and there you go. So it's like you could just go to a park and have a friend be there, or just write your vows and say them to each other. And you can go to a fabric store and get $5 worth of tulle. That's just clear fabric, and stick it in your hair. There you have a veil. Pick some flowers from a bush. You got some flowers, which we've done before too. And there you go. It is what you make it. It's the intention behind it. And we now have the finances that we can go different places in the world, and the budget has grown. So I'm very grateful for that. But there's been plenty where it was just the two of us in the corner of an airport or on the beach, or, with flowers that we just borrowed from a bush and made it what we made it. And it's not the budget, it's the intention.
Oh, I love that you said those words there, Susan, as well. I mean, such a beautiful story from both of you. Because as you're talking, Evan, and then when you switch to Susan there, it's like intention, gratitude, and celebration. Those are the three words that kept coming up for me. It's like once your intention is set, not on the outcome, not on the how this will get done, but more on like, who am I becoming? What am I looking for in this? Not outcome based. And then you celebrate and you bring gratitude into it. Wow.
Yes.
How powerful is that?
Yeah.
How simple, right? How easy and simple it becomes all of a sudden.
Yes. And this one, I'll tell you, because people ask a lot. They're like, oh, what's your favorite one? And you've had 33 and you've done all these amazing things. And we could, dazzle you with some of the amazing stuff. I mean, some of the more death-defying ones is we got married on top of the Sydney Bridge in Australia.
Oh, on top of it. Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was super cool. We've done the top of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and not at the post, like outside, but we chose to stay inside, right? But we were like,
we're gonna
get blown off. And we've done hot air balloons, and we've had some incredible, again, more exciting type adventures. But one that really sticks out was fascinating is we went into great Canada. Okay, your great country, Constantine. We went to BC, British Columbia. I know it's opposite coast. Okay, but went to BC, and again we had some friends that hosted us and took really good care of us. And I forgot the name of the special. Victoria Park. Is that what it was? It was some kind of park overlooking the water. We're all excited. We had the date, and then that morning it's raining. And so they call us and they're like, "Oh, look, we can move some things. We'll postpone it. Tomorrow it's supposed to be sunny and we'll do it." And then we looked at it and we're like, "We've never been married in the rain before. Let's do it." So it doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter what's going on. It, like you talked about, intention, gratitude, and celebration. And so we got some liquid sunshine. So we're like, okay. So we got married in the rain, and then we had these great pictures of us stomping around in puddles, with my bride's veil, and she's chasing geese around, and that's a thing in Canada, I guess.
Oh, the Canadian geese,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, geese everywhere. So that was one of our favorites because it was like, hey, we've never done this in the rain before. So again, so it's really like you talked about. It's the intention, the gratitude, and the celebration, not like, oh, it's got to be perfect. Because that I'll let you speak into that, because too many women, when you say wedding, they instantly do this because of all the stress involved in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of this natural So what we'd like to share and let people release and understand is you've already had one. So all your stress is over.
You've had the big one.
Yeah.
So where you had all these family commitments and expectations and the dress and, the venue and the gifts that you give to your guests and all of that. So after that, it's just for fun. It is literally just for fun. It is what you make it. We've had renewals where we incorporated the location into the vows, like when we did Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. Our friend who was a coach there, he renewed our vows for us, and he had all these Vince Lombardi quotes integrated into it. And then when we went to London, we had our friend who wrote our vows for us, and she incorporated Sherlock Holmes and like Harry Potter and like Jane Austen quotes into it. So it's fun. You make it fun, and then you laugh and you do a little crying for the joy of it, and you just enjoy the celebration of it.
Yes. So no stress celebration. On the last word for your 3 words, you got to add no stress, because the first one was stressful. These ones are just fun.
Yes. Even when your shoes break.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a story there.
There's 2 of them where my high heels broke. Okay, whatever. I just thought of that.
Yeah, it keeps reminding me like all these, the rain, the shoes breaking, all these, like the quote you just shared, right? It could be an excuse to be like, nah, okay, it's not going to happen today. It's going to be another time. Or just embrace the intention behind it, and that's it.
Yep.
So beautiful. Now, what have you seen yourself do as a result of implementing this in your personal life, in the marriage? Like how has this impacted your business, your relationship with your children, with friends, with family? Because I'd imagine it would have a ripple effect, quite massive one, in all relationships.
I can address the kids.
Sure. So when it comes to ripples, I think a lot of us need to be reminded, most of them, I would say 99.9% of them, like when you throw a stone in the water, or like you got the creek right by your house, right? You throw a stone in the creek, the ripples go out. So you rarely get to see the ripples coming forward. And so if you're doing it for the sake of ripples, you're not going to get a whole lot. So there's a lot of stuff that the ripples go out, and we just know, okay, they're going to affect somebody somewhere, somehow, in a positive way. And oftentimes one of the ripples, which was a challenge before, but now I'm in a much more emotionally, not stable, but much more mature place, where constantly and this part of this podcast, and there's a lot of people listening that, when you fully show up, when you're fully present, when you are right, there's a lot of people that run and hide because they can't handle it. And like I said, for me with shallow conversations, like I refuse to have a shallow conversation. And so people run and hide. And I've now gotten better at releasing them.
Yes, he asks people, like we just meet people and then he asks them a deep question. They're like, blah, blah, blah. What?
And I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead and let me meet some other people. That's fine. Right? And I just release them, right? And so it caused a lot of, it was a wake-up call for us of how many people are sleepwalking in the world.
Yes.
So it helped. On one part, it was like, whoa. And on the other hand, it was like, oh, you can easily find out who's awake. And they're far and few between. And I remember my son shared this one time. He's just like, Dad, our son's now 21. He was probably like 18 or 19 at the time. And he's just like, Dad, I don't understand. My friends are making all these stupid decisions. And I said, well, son, we've always talked about the 98%, right? And being a 2%er or a 1%er. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do the math, son. So if we're 2%ers, that means 98 of 100 people are doing stupid things. And that only leaves 2 people doing wise things. He goes, huh, yeah, got it. So, of just that understanding of, so in the beginning, it was a challenge of just like, wow, we're the only ones out here. And then it became just understanding that, you know what, this just shows how asleep people are. Instead of trying to shake people, that just shake them and wake them up. Now it's like, okay, you know what, we're just going to do our thing, and those that want to wake up will wake up, and if they want to come talk to us, great.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
yes.
kind of where we're at now. But I'll let you speak into the kids a little more.
Oh yeah, you asked about how this might affect our kids, and it really, we've set the bar very high for their future mates. Because they have grown up in a house of love. They have never ever seen Evan and I yell at each other ever, and
Wow.
we are just hoping that that instills them in them that yelling at each other and being mean to each other or manipulative of each other, it's not loving, it's not kind, it's not what God intended when he created man and woman to be together. And um, so we hopefully have set a really great example for our kids as to what they can anticipate helping to create in their own marriages and relationships.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. I mean, circling back to something you said, Evan, that like trying to shake people awake. I mean, I've been trying all my life to change people, right? Because it was so hard to change myself. And it's
Yes.
like, yeah, why look at myself? Let me try to change my partner, my dogs, right? Like whatever the case might be, other people I work with. And I then realized a few years back, quite a few now, it's like, oh my God, I had it all backwards. And it seems
Mm.
that that's how society goes these days, right? It's all like about projecting it outside of you, making it look like you don't have power, because as soon as you think everything is outside of your control, then yeah, you gave your power away. So I love that you brought it up, and the two of you talk about this quite a bit. So I'm curious to see, like, just by being unapologetically you, then you lead by example. And some people will be like a magnet. You're a magnet, right? Like some people will be attracted because they're like, oh my God, I love that energy. We want to have a conversation. I remember the first time you and I met, we had a beautiful conversation because we spoke a similar language, let's say.
Yes.
If if it had been the small talk would be a different language, then we push each other away, and that's fine. No problem at all. And that was a hard one for me to understand. And I know there's many people suffering with that, meaning that like you want to be accepted by everyone because maybe there's a fear of rejection, maybe there's a fear of enoughness, whatever the case might be. How do you see people reacting to how, or responding rather, to how the two of you are just being unapologetically true? And how do you see them, like, especially those that are not open at the beginning, but then they start to warm up and be like, you know what, maybe they know something I don't, or maybe they figured out something I should look into.
Yeah, we've seen, going back to the ripples, right? So we've had people come back later and say, "Yeah, I remember when we first met you, we thought you guys were crazy and no, no, no." But he's like, I really admire. There's been a few of those where they'll pull us aside and go, "Oh, yeah, I really admire you," and da da da. Or
Yeah.
we've had people share with us, that we had no clue. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you guys inspired us through such a hard time," and da da da. We're like, "We did? We never talked to you. What are you talking about?" They're like, "No, we just see you on Facebook and we read your content and we do this and this. Oh, it's been so helpful." And we were like, "Huh, interesting."
Or like people, we meet people like at church, and like I typically sit in the front row because I don't want to be distracted by everybody behind me. I'm there to worship, I'm there to learn, and so we're always in the front row, and we're very affectionate, like putting arms around each other and loving each other, because his love language is physical touch. So I want to make sure, just when I'm sitting there, that I'm filling his love tank. But people, like, we meet people later and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're the honeymooners that are sitting in the front row." We're like, I guess we are.
I guess you are. That's
That's
beautiful.
happened so many times. We're like, well, because people, there, I don't know, not everybody is affectionate, and that's totally fine. But I want to make sure to fill his love tank, and so I touch him a lot.
So beautiful. I love this, Susan. I love it so much. Yeah, I think leading by example is one of the most underrated and sometimes overrated things at the same time. So what I've realized myself, and I'm curious to see your take on this, either one of you, is this idea that, when I looked at leading by example in the past, it was like, oh, I have to be this person to be able to lead by example. But the reality is that you lead by example in everything that you do, good,
Mm.
better, and indifferent, right? We just don't realize that we're doing it. It doesn't matter if you have a title or you don't have a title. And I
Yeah.
don't have kids
Everywhere
yet,
you go. Yeah.
but I look at my dogs and I'm like, oh yeah, they look up to me all the time. So I am a leader in my life.
But everywhere you go, you are an example of how to be compassionate, how to not ignore people, but just like, as you walk by people, look them in the eye, smile at them. You never know what somebody else is going through. And by you just being kind or seeing them, and Rick say, I see you, that
Mm.
it just means the world to people. But they're always watching. People are always watching. So we need to make sure that we are being love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come from a place of love. I love that so much. And that's been a big lesson for me over the last little while. And it's interesting how it all plays out once you do that more and more. All of a sudden, I think Evan touched on this. Certain people will get repelled, others will be attracted into your world, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden things open up that you're like, how is this possible? It doesn't make sense. Yet it does. Yet it's here. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I'm sure there has been challenges in your marriage, perhaps, but also in this approach to remarry every year or multiple times a year. What would you say were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and perhaps how did you overcome them?
Mm. Yeah, so going back to what my bride said, I know there's some people that may have had a disconnect of like, what do you mean your kids have never heard you yell at each other? What's going on? No, 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 this and this. So I want to address that and then address the joy of the challenges because
Yes.
they continue. But just going back to as far as challenging the mindset, right? So many people have heard this like, oh, you need to fight fair or fighting is healthy. And we totally reject that because, and I'm talking about screaming, yelling, fighting, that kind of thing. So I tell people all this time. And so for our C-suite guys, like if you're in the C-suite and you're talking to a junior, or just remember the time when you were a junior executive or middle manager, think Fortune 500. I know, Constantine, that's where you come
Yeah.
from, right? So
Yeah.
let's picture you, right? Fortune 500, you're on a Zoom, or let's say you go to corporate HQ, right? And you're getting 5 minutes with the CEO. I doubt you've ever had a yelling and screaming match with the CEO. I can't believe you did this, right? I doubt that you've ever cussed out or said things that you wanted to take back to your pastor or your rabbi or your spiritual leader or whoever, right? You go, yeah, I don't think I've ever yelled and cussed out my pastor or rabbi, or the CEO, right, or whatever. And that's because you have so much respect for either that person or the position.
Yeah.
And so I applied that same mindset to our marriage. I said, I respect my bride so much
Mm.
that I refuse to yell at her and act like a second grader. Now, full disclosure, full transparency, I have yelled and acted like a second grader with my kids lots of times. Okay, let's just, right? So they have never seen us yell at each other, but they have been yelled at by me over stupid stuff over and over and over and over and over again. So I just want to make
we've thrown tantrums with our children.
Yes, we definitely have. In the car, outside the car, whatever. My kids still remember some good ones. They're like, oh, yeah, you were really mad. I'm like, yes, I was. I still harken back to the one I feel the most stupid. Man, I was so upset. My son decided for April Fools, as a joke, to turn the hot water heater off.
Oh.
And that triggered me so much because the warm shower at that stage, that was like the one thing I could go and just be in a warm shower and de-stress and do this. Now, keep in mind, I'm the guy now that likes to go in cold plunges and do this, but the shower is like this magical place.
Like a little haven.
Yes, it's like, I'm just going to go be warm. And then I get this cold shower. And he's like, oh, man. And then I had to go out and fix it. And it's this old jank. It's not like, it's not like you just turn the switch. It was
pilot wouldn't
the pilot wouldn't lie. It was a whole old, it was just a compound, right? I just lost it with him. He was like, Dad, you were so pissed. I'm like, yes, I was. So make sure listeners understand that. But again, to my bride, I'm like, no, there's no way I'm going to be yelling at her because I respect her and I respect what we've created together so much that I just refuse to do that. So when people are yelling and screaming at their spouses or fighting, that is totally unhealthy. And it's about going back to your room of improvement and saying, okay, what's the real issue? Because the truth of the matter, and we can go, right, ancient scriptures, right? God created Adam out of the dust of the earth, and then Adam created Eve out of the side of Adam. God created Eve out of the side of Adam. And so the woman, the word woman is from man. So the reason most people get so angry and so upset with their spouses is because they're not mad at them. They're mad at themselves.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, they're triggering me. I'm mad at myself. I can't control it. So it's easier to play the victim and just yell at them. And so we challenge people to rise to greatness, to say, hey, if you're going to go yell at somebody, go yell at yourself. Go look in the mirror and yell at yourself. Okay? Go outside and have a tantrum. That's fine. But you don't need to direct it at this person who's really the best thing you have going. Right? That's the best thing you have to work with. Why do you want to destroy that, right? Why do you want to poison the well, right? It's like, hey, so that's kind of our journey understanding with that. But as it comes to challenges and what's going on and what's happening, we've had them all. And, everybody's like, again, from financial challenges to in-law challenges to outlaw challenges to the current wonderful season that we're in right now of aging parents, and we're at this stage of empty nesters. And so it's like, oh, well, we homeschooled our kids. So for the last 18 years, we've been pouring into homeschooling our kids. Now they're moving out, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And now we got aging parents, and then we've got menopause, and then we've got this and that. And so,
yeah, he says we have menopause because me having menopause, going through menopause, is definitely impacting both of us. Yes. So it is a we.
Yes, it's a we.
We were pregnant, and now we are going through menopause.
Yes. And so again, the challenges. I love that you brought that up, because too often people miss and they think like, okay, as soon as I get through this challenge, then I'm good, right? It'll never happen again, right? And I want to hearken to the picture behind you. During our corporate retreats and speaking of things I get invited to, I have a talk that's called the Peak Continuum. So it's understanding that it's this continuum of going and living from peak to peak. And so the peaks, whether you want to call them highs or lows, whatever, we'll say highs. Like, too many people, like, they think, okay, once I get to the mountaintop and once I conquer this, once I scale my company, Constantine, you've seen it. You've got probably thousands of listeners. Man, once I scale, everything's going to be great. Once I get better cash flow, everything's going to be great. Once we exit, everything's going to be great, right? And they get to the top, and then they realize, wait a minute, the air's too thin up here. Wait, hold on. This is not sustainable, right? And then you come back down the peak, and then you get into your period of doubt, and then the dark days and the challenges, and then you go back up again. And so many people think, okay, this is the last peak, and then we're good. And it's embracing that it's a continuum and understanding that, okay, this is just, again, after this challenge, right, there's going to be another challenge. It won't be menopause. It won't be this. It's going to be something else, right? And so embracing that and understanding the continuum part instead of this destination disease, right? Of as soon as I get here, I'll be happy. Or as soon as we accomplish this, we'll do this. So just understanding that. And that's really part of, again, the marriage of greatness mindset. Again, because so many people think, gosh, if I just made more money, our marriage would be great. And obviously that's not it, right? Nope. If we could just, move, that would be it. If we could just do this, or we could do this, right? And in sports, you see it all the time, right? You see these players like, well, if I could just get on that team, everything would be great. All right, well, sorry.
Doesn't work the way. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I've realized more recently than I like to admit sometimes is that at the root of all of that, what you just talked about, is a built-in fear of enoughness for many, many of us. Like saying, oh, when I get to this next point, then I'll have enough, I'll be enough. That's the illusion. So when you get there, you realize, well, it wasn't. That's what I was many years ago, fighting my depression, suicidal thoughts, despite having the American dream, because I kept
Mm.
moving the goalpost, and it wasn't bringing any internal fulfillment or joy. And then that's what I see so many people being impacted by, and it's like, okay, well, maybe take a step back. Let's see, is there anything where we can slow down to actually take a look inwards instead of outwards? And that's what you're talking about. It's so beautiful. I like the visual, right? The visual I usually go to is like, have you seen a stock market graph, right? If
Yeah,
you zoom
yeah,
out enough, it looks very
yeah,
straight, right?
yep,
As soon
yep,
as you zoom in,
yep,
it can look like a complete disaster. And that's
yes.
pretty much life.
And yeah, and it's interesting, but the labeling, right? Like you
Mm,
somehow, right? Yeah, and I'll challenge you on this, right? Like, oh no, the down is a disaster. Well, is it? Right?
it
Like,
just looks like it.
yeah, no, but is it really, right? But that's what you have to, like. Let's go Jim Rohn 101, right?
yeah,
Like, what do you have to work with? I got rain, I got sunshine, I got seed and soil, right? So if I'm blaming the only thing I have to work with, right? Like, oh man, if it's just too hot. Oh, if it was colder, it'd be better. If it was warmer, it was better. If it wasn't raining, it'd be better. Was it like that's all you have to work with, right? So it's like let's look at what we have to work with, and we understand, right? Like staying at the peak, like for example, that peak right behind you, or
mm,
whether I know we got our hardcores out there. Maybe some of your listeners have been to Everest, they've been to Kilimanjaro, or we got some West Coast people, they've climbed Mount Rainier or whatever. But every single giant mountain peak that you've ever seen or people have ever climbed, guess what, Constantine? There
I've-
are no resorts or Airbnbs at the top of these peaks, right? You're not made to stay there.
Mm.
And so understanding that, oh, wait, part of the mosaic is having all of the colors and everything, right? So it's not a disaster when you're walking down the peak. It's like, oh, this is just part of it. It's not
yeah,
walking up the peak. It's like, hey, how can I get the clarity of saying, okay, where am I on this journey? For some of us, understanding, hey, you get to the peak, you celebrate, woohoo, you take a few pictures, and then it's like, all right, let's come down and get up, get up the next peak. But understanding, like, hey, there is no disaster. This is all perfection, and it's all part of it. And sure, there's parts we don't like, but it's like, hey, this is part of the deal. This is what I have to work with. So let's go.
that's it. I love it. And it's, I mean, to put it in the context for myself of like what we're just talking about at the beginning, your marriage and remarrying every year or multiple times a year, right? You could say that's the peak, right? You go to that, you have that celebration,
Yes.
and then it's coming back down and preparing for the next, and then it goes up again and all of that. So I can definitely see it.
Yay.
That's amazing. Oh, I love talking to the both of you so much here. I know we're coming up on our 45 minutes here that we usually do our show for. I'm curious to see if either of you or both of you would like to add one piece of wisdom that maybe we haven't talked about many things, but something that comes up for you that someone listening right now that maybe going through something tough right now, what can they do to pull themselves out of it?
Mm.
I would say take our eyes off of ourselves and look to others.
Mm.
Look to instead of focusing down, me, if we take our eyes up and we look out to see the needs of other people and we start filling the needs of other people, then we are going to be filled.
Wow.
So
Susan, I love that.
that helps.
It
And I'm not
helps a lot.
speaking to you, I'm speaking to me too. And I'm just self-focused and thinking about, challenges that I may be having. If I look up and I look around me and I see a need and I meet it, or I seek to meet it, or I try to meet it, or I encourage somebody, then by filling them, I'm filling myself. So that would be my one tidbit.
Oh, that's amazing, Susan. That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Oh.
Encore. Yes.
Helping people fill their cups as you fill yours.
Yes.
Yes. So she brings the wisdom. I kind of bring the length and take everybody the long way around the block.
Yeah. Well, let's see if you can top that up, Evan. I'm not sure about that.
Well, I'll go a different way. I love to share and help people understand because I have a film production company. Obviously, we live in Los Angeles, right? You got to be in movies if you live in LA, right? So we have a whole film finance division, and I'm super excited to share with your audience because they're the caliber. We have a documentary that we did called Words of Art with some of the great thought leaders. So we've got stuff from Jim Rohn, and we've got some Zig Ziglar, we've got some Joel Osteen, we've got some Mark Batterson, we've got some Darren Hardy, and so they're all in this, and it's called Words of Art, and it's about looking at the spoken word as an art form.
Yes.
And so, again, love sharing that and plugging that. So I know a lot of you people will appreciate that. But when it comes to movies, the reason I bring that up is last tip is for those that are going through it, right? That are like, man, I don't know if we're going to make it to the top of this mountain because, man, we're running long. Yeah, stuff's falling apart. Like everything's happening, right? For those people, what I want to share with you is don't leave the movie early. Okay, so think about this. I don't know if you saw Constantine. I'm sure some of your listeners saw it. Top Gun Maverick. That was
Yeah, of course. I've
one of
seen
our favorites. Oh yeah. Okay. So imagine if you were at the, watching at home, your device, or in a theater or whatever. Imagine if you left the movie early, right? You would you'd come, get all excited, and be like, if you left the movie early, you'd be like, oh, that was so depressing. Poor Maverick. He hasn't been promoted. He can't pay his bar bill. He gets thrown out. Gosh, he got his motorcycle impounded because he wasn't wearing a helmet. I mean, gosh, like life sucks.
His mentor died.
Yeah, his mentor died. Like life sucks for Maverick. That movie was depressing, right? Like that's if you left early. But if you stayed and saw, oh wow, he changes, he and Penny connect. Oh wow, he gets the bad guys. Oh, he reunites, right, with his buddy's son, and they have the father-son relationship they always, right? But you miss that if you leave early. Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's go something more iconic. Let's look at Cinderella, right? Classic, right? Everyone loves Cinderella. What if you left that movie early, right? Oh man, Disney made the most depressing movie ever, right? We got this young teenage girl who's abused and neglected, and her prom dress gets destroyed, and oh man, that movie sucked, right? But if you stay, what you miss, right? If you stay, then you get Prince Charming. Then you get to see her forgive her mother-in-law and all this stuff, right? So don't leave the movie early. Trust me, right? Like the little YouTube, watch all the YouTube videos and they have the little red dot, right? Sadly, we don't get to advance the red dot. Times we feel like it, like, okay, let's fast forward this part, right? It's like, no, trust me. There's great stuff coming. There is great stuff coming. So don't leave the movie early.
Love that. Wow. I'm feeling inspired. I'm sure people in the as well. So I want to thank both of you. Such a pleasure to see with you here. So far apart in distance, but feeling so close in energy. So thank you both for your time, your presence, your energy, and your love. Wow, thank you.
Oh, you are absolutely most welcome. And I think you've inspired our landscaper across the street who's revving up. I'm sure your listeners can hear all that. And that's part of the LA journey, right? Of loud landscapers and all that. But that's part of the beautifulness here. So Constantine, such a joy. I appreciate you having my bride and I on. And again, I'm excited for the real men of greatness out there and women of greatness that, for the men that are ready to rise up to the challenge and say, okay, I can build a business, but can I build a marriage? And let's take that same mindset and put it towards that. And for the women, I ask the women to answer the call for the pressing need for them to rise up and create a marriage of greatness and say, hey, you know what? Look at what I have in front of me. Let me create greatness with this instead of just good enough and the 98% and sleepwalking, because that is going to inspire so many other people that they don't even know. And so to my bride's point, right? Like, let's take our eyes off ourselves, put them on others, and magically we feel better. So
absolutely. Beautiful. That's it. I mean, I got nothing else to add. That's so beautiful. Like, I love the ending. So with that, thank you. I won't have you back. That's for sure.
Yay!
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of personal transformation. Your presence and engagement are at the heart of what we do, and I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and thirst for knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment. Please consider showing your support by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment, or writing a review. Your engagement not only fuels our mission, but also helps others discover these insights. For more daily guidance on personal transformation across the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms, be sure to visit our website at unleashthyself.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Unleash Thyself Today, TikTok and YouTube at Unleash Thyself, and there we post daily content designed to inspire and empower you on your journey. If you have any specific thoughts, questions, or feedback, I truly value your input. I would love to hear from you. Together, we're building a community united in authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you for being a part of this movement. Until next time, continue to embrace your true self and live a life on purpose, with purpose. See you in the next episode.